Let's take a look at a second example of another position that you saw on LinkedIn. So we'll do something very similar where we applied online. So we'll add a card, and in this particular case, the company was called Initech, and they were looking for a senior Java developer, and we were interested in that position. So if we go into this particular role, we have an attachment because I have a job description from Initech that I want to include. So I'm going to include that there. I'm going to make some notes and just say, saw this on LinkedIn, applied online, see what happens. And now that I've got that, I can then move it into the, we've got it into the applied online bucket. So we're all set there, and we've got our notes, and we've applied online. Now, unfortunately, as many candidates know, just because you apply online, it doesn't mean that someone's going to call you back. So in this particular example, we never heard back from the company. So let's go into the card and just say, waited a few weeks, never heard back, closing out, not worth following up with anyone. And so what we'll do now is we'll move this into a different bucket, and this one's called closed no response. And I'll click on move. And so now you can see that we have two cards, one for closed where we didn't have a response, another one with closed with an offer but declined. In our next example, let's take a look at a situation where a recruiter contacts you about a specific job. So in that case, we use something called active in play. So nothing's really happened with it. It's just a conversation, an initial conversation. And so what I'll do here is I'll add the company. In this case, it's a job with Wonka Industries. And the position's for a data warehouse director. And in this particular case, we were able to get our hands on the job description. So we're going to put that along with the particular card. Going to add some comments. Talked with recruiter about position. Waiting to have interview scheduled. And so now we've got that here, and we're going to move that into active interview scheduled or in process, because we know that there's the recruiter told us we're going to have an interview. It's in the process of happening, so we're going to store it in this bucket. So let's say we finally have the interview. We're going to go ahead and we're going to make some notes about the interview. Interview went well. Hope to hear back from them. Oops, sorry about that. And then we can move this card into because we had the interview, it's now the post-wait interview. We're trying to see what's going to happen at this point. So let's say we hear back from the recruiter. They want to go ahead and schedule us for another interview. So I could make some more notes, but this card would go into this bucket. We're waiting for the interview. And then let's say that we had the second round of interviews, second round complete, but the company decided to pass, unfortunately. So in this case, we're going to move our card into a new list, and this is where company passed after an interview. And so this is yet another bucket where we're now storing information. So I'm using these examples as things that could potentially happen. And of course, there are lots of different scenarios and different ways that a position and an opportunity could come about. So, just kind of understand that things could happen and be very different with every scenario. These are just a couple scenarios that I picked out. And I know that I'm going through a lot of detail here in these activities, and some of it's repetitive, but I'm doing that just because I want you to see what it's really like in action, to go through kind of like the small minutia here of tracking all these different events. So now let's take a look at a fourth example. And in this example, we have a friend who passed along information on a job or could have been a company on an existing future opportunity, and they provide the recruiting manager or hiring manager's contact information. So in a case like this, we'll add the card, and we know that it's with a company called Oceanic Airlines, and the position's for an IT program manager. And what we're going to do in this case is we're going to say, my friend Bob told me about opportunity, waiting to speak with hiring manager. Their name is say Don. And so we'll leave that in play just because we haven't had any conversations yet. We haven't applied anything like that. Well, so then the next step is we know that we're going to hear back from the recruiter, the hiring manager, and sure enough we do. And so we'll just say talked with Don, who asked me to come in for interview. So we'll save that, and then we can move that into the interview scheduled or in process bucket. So now that we have that here. And again, the idea behind having all these different columns or lists is that you could quickly look at what are all the interviews that you have scheduled? What are all of the opportunities you have where you interviewed and you're just waiting? Really quick and easy to see buckets of where your opportunities are. Okay, so we had the interview scheduled, and now let's say the interview was successful. Had interview, waiting to see what happens. And so moving that into the post-wait interview. And let's say things go really well and they liked me and they want to meet with me next week for second round. Interview scheduled. Say 1-5. And we can move that card into interview scheduled. And then let's say we have that interview, and after that interview is performed, you took a look at that opportunity and you just decide, it's not quite the right thing. So had interview, not the right fit. And we can go ahead and we can select to move our card into a separate list. And in this case, there was no offer. It was just you decided to pass. And so we'll move that card over into that particular bucket. So you can see that over time, you can have a lot of different opportunities that have a lot of different ends. Some where the company passed after an interview, some where you passed, some where you passed because you had an offer but you declined, others where there's no responses. So again, lots of different scenarios. Let's walk through one final one. And in this final example, you have a company you're trying to generate a relationship with. So in a situation like that, I'm going to put in place a active card for something in play. And this is for a position with a company called Hooli, and it's a client engagement director. And for that particular position, like all my others, I'm going to attach the resume. I'm sorry, the job description. Got that there. And in this case, I'm just trying to generate a conversation with someone. I don't know them. I don't want to apply. So I'm just going to put in some notes like looking for someone at the firm to talk about the position with. So just something that's out there, it's in play, nothing's happened with it yet. And let's say I was able to find someone, have an internal conversation about it, but I just decide, it's just not something that I'm really interested in. So what I can do is just make some notes and just say, talked with someone about the role, doesn't sound like my kind of thing, just not interested. And I have a special bucket where I put these types of items, and I just put it under closed informal discussion completed. Because sometimes you have conversations with people about a position and really doesn't manifest itself into the formal process of applications and interviews. But it is something where you want to track that you've had conversations with people. And so that's what this particular closed informal discussion completed budget is. And so we took a look at all these different workflow items and talked about how we can move cards in between. Now, there are a lot of things that I haven't shown you, but I'd like to next. And that deals with areas where we talked about labels. Before we talked about labels where you can express your interest in a particular position. And so, for example, maybe for this particular rich industries, there's an offer but not declined. But I did really like that position. I can label that as a high interest position, and that will get tagged with a red. And maybe with this Initech, that wasn't something I was as interested in, so I'm going to mark that as low. You can go through all of your different opportunities and you can tag them so that you can quickly see at a top level the things that are more important to you or less important. So these colors of these tags can change, and there are browser extensions and other types of add-on applications that will display the name of the label instead of just the marker. And you can also see you can put your mouse over the particular label and that will show you the label name. But there are some other options. So instead of doing a mouse over, you would be able to see what that particular label is. So labels are really powerful at a high level because you might get to the point where you have, and I'm just going to put a bunch in here. Let's say I have job 1, job 2, job 3, job 4. A lot of items that are in play. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. And maybe not all of them are really standouts, but job 3 is. So I'm just going to hit L on the keyboard here as a shortcut, and I'm just going to express that as a high interest. So what's helpful here with the labels is that you can take a look at those things that are in play, and by tagging it with the right label, you can focus on that particular item. So that's labels. Another thing we can take advantage of are due dates. So let's say that we wanted to follow up on job 3. So let's say like want to make sure I don't lose out on this. You can create a due date. So let's say you don't hear back from someone and you want to follow up on a particular date. You can set a due date. And once that's done, you can see that the particular due date gets added onto the card. So that's a way of using due dates on cards. There are also some other things that we can do. If we go to the show menu, you can see all of the activity along the right-hand side here for everything that we've done in this specific board. So a really powerful way to take a look at all the activity. And remember, Trello will track every single thing that you do. So you have a really good activity log of all of those things. Another thing that I want to talk about is this concept of power-ups. So power-ups are Trello's way of providing additional add-on feature sets that are available for free, but in a very limited capacity. You're allowed a very limited amount of power-ups per board unless you pay for the membership, and then you can do as many as you want. But one of the things that I've enabled is custom fields. And I've created some custom fields to be able to reflect some interesting, what I think is interesting information to track, such as a contact, a hiring manager, the date close, things like that. So if we take a look at, and let's backtrack on this Wonka Industries. Let's do a better example. Let's backtrack and take Hooli, and maybe things change from an informal discussion. Maybe it's back in play again. So if we move that into in play and we click on it and we go into our power-ups, you can see that I have some really what they're called is custom fields. So maybe my contact there is let's say Joe Smith. I learned the hiring manager is Lori Simpson, and I leave these items blank. But if I click on save, you can now see that this appears at the top of the card, and here at the high level, we can see a lot of this data exposed at the top level. So power-ups and specifically custom fields can be really valuable as ways to track information with fields that you're looking to track that are much more specific. And one caveat is, and this might change over time, but on the iPhone application, the mobile apps don't expose custom fields. But I suppose they will over time, just at the time I'm creating this video. But with all these different options, I really wanted to talk about how we create cards, how we title those cards with the name of the company and the opportunity, how we can use attachments in the cards to add a job description or maybe benefit information. We also talked about how you can use the comment section to track details associated with that opportunity. We discussed due dates as ways that we can track our follow-ups. And we also talked about power-ups and specifically custom fields. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is this template card that's all the way out here on the left-hand side and available. So I think the use of this template runs into the kind of more extreme way to track a particular opportunity, but I wanted to show it to you because you might find it helpful, and it could be a real value add for you. So I'm going to click on this template, and one of the things that you'll see in this template is a series of checklists. So we didn't talk about checklists earlier, but checklists can be tied back to a particular card, and so maybe we have this opportunity with Hooli where we have a post-interview wait, and they've told us that there's some things that they want us to do while we're waiting. So maybe there's some information we need to send them. So we can create a checklist for ourselves of things that we need to do. So for example, send sample of writing. Start sending references. All those types of things, we can track those in a checklist associated with a particular card, and we can also see the icon up here for a checklist. And as we work our way through our checklist, the items get completed, and as they're completed, we can also show that they're completed here. Well, what I've done in this template is I've created multiple checklists for the various portions of and phases of working with a particular opportunity at a very detailed level. So if you're really interested in tracking and performing specific tasks, such as adding the attachment to the card, researching the company to understand what they do, all these things are really, really valuable portions of what you're going to want to perform in the initial research and analysis, or in the interview stage. Ask who you'll be interviewing with, research the interviewer, possibly on LinkedIn, prepare questions. These are all things that you'll want to do, but for certain opportunities, you may want to track this on an opportunity by opportunity basis. And so if you find that it's valuable to track an opportunity, especially a high interest opportunity with that level of detail, instead of creating a new card, you can click on the template card, click on copy, and then we can enter in the title, and let's just say the opportunity again is with Rich Industries, and the position is a Scrum Master. And we'll keep the checklist and we'll move it to in play, and we'll create the card. So now what we've done here is we have a new card called Rich Industries with the position, and you can see that we have the checklist, and we can now start working through this checklist on this particular opportunity, on an opportunity by opportunity basis. So maybe a lot of overhead for you in terms of what you're tracking, but at the same time could be a really powerful and helpful way for you to be able to track at a very detailed level all the things that you need to do. And so that's how you can leverage the card templates to help you tracking your initiatives. So this is the place to track all the opportunities you have using cards with all the information that you put into the card to help you keep track of everything you need to keep track of with your opportunities.